Welcome to the Zoom Wednesday night Bible study. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video, and I hope that you will be blessed by it. Difficult and troublesome passages can be found throughout the Bible, but the focus of this short-term Bible study will be the ones that come from Jesus. I've titled this Bible study series, Jesus Said What? Though we will attempt to make sense of these hard sayings of Jesus and consider the ways that they are relevant to us today, I want us to remember that it's okay to wrestle with the scriptures. It's okay to set with the tension that some of these passages present to us. I like what Amy Jill Levine writes in her book, The Difficult Words of Jesus. She writes, "The Bible is less a book of answers than a book that helps us ask the right questions. And by wrestling with these hard sayings of Jesus, may we find ourselves more faithfully committed to discipleship and discovering how the abundant life that Jesus promises is lived out." Now, the short time limits of our Zoom Bible study will prevent us from doing a deep dive in these passages, but maybe enough will be said that it will whet our appetite to keep wrestling with these difficult passages, for I believe if we do, there is reward for us. Tonight, we're going to look at two passages. They're on the same topic, but they're two passages, and we really do need to take a look at both of them. So here is the first one. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions: do not take a road leading to Gentiles, and do not enter a Samaritan town, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with a skin disease, cast out demons. You received without payment, give without payment, and on it goes. That's from Matthew chapter 10, verses 5 through 8. In Matthew 10, Jesus chooses his 12 disciples and then sends them out on a missionary trip to proclaim that the kingdom of God, or the kingdom of heaven, a phrase that is preferred by Matthew, that the kingdom of God has come near. Go forth and proclaim the good news of the kingdom of God and give witness to that kingdom by curing the sick, raising the dead, cleansing the lepers, and casting out demons. But for people who believe the good news is for everyone, for churches like Spirit of the Cross, no matter who you are, where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. The hard saying of Jesus in this passage is obvious. Jesus said, don't go to the Gentiles, nor the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. What's going on here? I know that it sounds pretty harsh to those of us who live 2,000 years later, but to those who heard it first, Jews living in the first century, it wouldn't have been that strange or offensive. The Jewish understanding of the kingdom, the Jewish understanding of what the Messiah would be all about, the Jewish understanding of their calling was that it would be through Abraham, through Israel, that all the nations of the world would be blessed. Israel would be first so that they could be a light unto the nations. As Amy Jill Levine writes, the disciples did not need to visit the Gentiles. God would call them in after Israel had heard the good news. The disciples would be like the latter prophets of Israel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, all the way to Malachi, who speak to Israel and not to Gentiles, end of quote. And then when we think about it, the Apostle Paul made a similar point in Romans. For I am not ashamed of the gospel. It is God's saving power for everyone who believes, for the Jew first, and also for the Greek, or for the Gentiles. And this comes from Amy Jill Levine. Thus, the exclusivity logia of Matthew 10, 5 through 6 and 15:24 have nothing to do with anti-Gentile prejudice. They rather have to do with God's timetable, God's fidelity to the people of Israel, and what actually happened, and I've added what actually happened in Matthew. The issue at hand is whether the good news of the kingdom of God is particular, that is, for a particular segment of people, or is the good news of the kingdom of God universal for everyone? My reply is that it is both. And I believe that both the particular and the universal of the good news is played out in the Gospel of Matthew. Other than the Magi recognizing Jesus as the King of the Jews when Jesus was a little boy, and a handful of other encounters, the good news of the kingdom and the ministry of Jesus has been in line with God's timetable of the Jew first. But that begins to change. The next time we hear Jesus say, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, he gets pushback. So let's go there. Jesus left there and departed for the district of Tyre and Sidon. It happened that a Canaanite woman living in that area came and cried out to Jesus, have mercy on me, Lord, son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon. But Jesus did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, send her away, for she keeps shouting after us. Finally, Jesus turned to the woman and said, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But she came and knelt before him, saying, Lord, help me. He answered, it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. She said, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Jesus then said in reply, woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish. At that very moment, her daughter was healed. This passage for me is harder than the one in Matthew 10. It's really hard for us to hear Jesus insult a mother who is desperate as she advocates for her daughter and who is also a believer. And there have been many attempts to soften what Jesus said. But to me, all those efforts fall short. As we've already said in tonight's lesson, Jesus was obviously a Jewish man, a Jewish rabbi in his own time, and this is especially so in Matthew's gospel. However, in Matthew 15, we have a Gentile Canaanite woman who pushes back. And those around Spirit of the Cross know that I preach and teach that it's okay to engage, to push back, and to wrestle with God. God never seems to mind it and even welcomes it. My only advice is if you do, just don't quit. Don't abandon the wrestling match. Be like Jacob. Don't turn loose until you are blessed by God. Anyway, this Canaanite mom was not going to be deterred by Jesus's inclusivity statement. She knew Jesus was better than that. So she pushes back. And as we just read, after Jesus told her that he had come only to the lost sheep of Israel, she just doubles down. She kneels before him. He tells her that it isn't right to take, he then says that it's not right to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. That's just, Jesus just called her a dog. That's rude. She takes Jesus's insult. And then in humility and persistence and trust, she counters Jesus' reply by making a case for dogs. You see, in Jewish homes of Galilee, and that's where Jesus lived, dogs were not pets, and they were not ever allowed in the house. They considered dogs as scavengers. Dogs ate garbage and unclean foods, which in turn made them unclean. It's one of the reasons Jews called Gentiles dogs, for in Jewish eyes, Gentiles were unclean like dogs. But in Gentile country, and that's where Jesus is in Matthew 15, there was a different viewpoint about dogs. In Gentile countries, dogs were pets and were allowed in the house and were not considered scavengers because the dogs ate the same food as the humans did. So when the Canaanite woman responded to Jesus by saying, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table," she was saying, in effect, Jesus, maybe in your country and culture, dogs are kept outside and considered unclean, but in my country, dogs are part of the household and they get the same food that comes from the human table. Jesus, call me a dog if you want to, but I and my daughter are still a part of the household of humanity. Orthodox Christian theology teaches that Jesus was both fully human and fully divine. We are very comfortable with the divinity of Jesus. We have no problems with that. Our discomfort usually comes with the fully human Jesus. The verbal exchange with the Canaanite woman really shows that fully human Jesus, and he was a Jewish man of his time. But does this mean that Jesus sinned? No, because it isn't a sin to change one's mind. We live in a world today that conveys that it's wrong to change one's mind, or it's implied that changing one's mind is a sign of weakness. But the Gospels teach us otherwise. And I think we need to hear that today. And from then on, things begin to change. And by the end of the Gospel of Matthew, we read the good news of the gospel is for everyone. As Jesus instructs, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, Jew and Gentile alike. So how do we make sense of the hard saying of Jesus in both Matthew 10 and 15? I'll let a scholar answer that. When he restricted his mission to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, Jesus was not being either a bigot or a xenophobe. He was being faithful to his tradition. The Gospel of Matthew recognizes that both Jewish and Gentile identities are important, and it gives us the model of not just recognizing, but even celebrating various forms of difference in our own setting. The good news, the gospel that the kingdom of God has come near, the good news of Jesus is both particular and universal. And that's good news worth celebrating. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And until next week, God's abundant grace and peace to you.